Yeah, you don't get a lot of the music today. Sorry about that. I thought I had my opening music playing. I didn't. By the way, the name of that band that plays that opening jingle of mine is called Track Tribe. Give them a check out. They have free use music on YouTube, but I can't thank them enough, even though I've never personally interacted with them. It's pretty cool to put free use up like that. And I think it's a banger of a song. Welcome to the Normal America Show. Your host, Rob Norr. It's great to be here today. Back at my home office. Haven't streamed for a couple days. Took a little time off for various reasons. No sound. I hope it's just a you issue, because on my end it's looking like there's sound. Can anyone else confirm to me if they are hearing me or not? I hope so. Maybe that's someone that's just behind a little. So someone just let me know in the chat if they could hear me. On my end, it looks like you should all be able to hear me. Okay. So anyways, we're back home. There we go. Okay. We're back home. I was unable to stream for a couple reasons. Work with the holidays coming up, there was a little extra stuff to do, so it was difficult for me to stream in off hours during work because I didn't have as many this time. The other thing is I was sort of bummed out. I had reported since last Friday, if you didn't see, I did a little live stream. Just my dog Annabelle passed away. I still miss her dearly, but less emotional probably today than I was. So I don't know if I was in a good headspace to be able to stream. So I'm good. I'm good now. I'm ready to go. I think we got a debate lined up tonight. We're seeing if that's going to be the case here. Should get some confirmation on that shortly. Just random people on X that wanted to call in and debate me on a particular topic. So I'll explain that. Hopefully that'll lead to some good content tonight. And I gotta say, I'm of two different minds tonight. So I'll explain what the topic is, and I'll explain what's going on. But as a precursor to that, let me say the following. My back hurts quite a bit here lately. The injection I got in my back, I could tell, has started to wane. And so I'm getting more pain in my back like I used to, which is probably going to just put me in a grumpier mood than normal. We'll see about that. And I am still a little pissed off about my dog dying. So I'm trying to remind myself that one of the things I'm trying to do is turn over a new leaf and maybe not fly off the handle as quick as possible as I have in the past at certain points. But nothing would give me greater joy than to just smack it. Thanks, man. Thanks for the well wishes about the dog. Nothing would give me greater joy than to just hammer down some lefties today. Oh, it'd be wonderful. Every time I open the phone lines up, I end up talking to another righty. So, you know, it'll be nice to... no, I'm not going Luigi on you. Unless you mean Luigi Mario, who... Fantastic. Thanks, guys. Thank you. I appreciate all the kind words about Annabelle. She was a trooper. She was a good dog. So, but we'll talk about her more when I do my 10,000 sub show. Maybe we'll have some parts in that coming next month. So, anyways, topic tonight's supposed to be, I put out a little short video today on X and on YouTube and on Rumble, and I forgot to put them up on Rumble, actually. Bummer. Anyways, only the John Leguizamo Mario, or Luigi Mario. True story. I do believe that the first time we heard the Mario Brothers last name was from the Mario Brothers movie, where there was Mario, and Luigi Mario. Mario's last name is Mario. So, very interesting. For all the shit that movie gets, I think at least that part of it has stuck along. Yeah, that's what I'm hearing, Raiceland. So, fortunately, it looks like I won't be able to get back in for another injection until probably the end of January. So, just going to have to deal with it until then. So, I put out a little video, and the topic was, I find it incredibly amusing watching all of these Democrats, establishment types that are outraged that maybe there'll be investigations into Liz Cheney or Adam Schiff. We need preemptive pardons. This is out of control. It's fascism. That's what it is. It's fascism. You can't have political witch hunts like this. You can't do it. It's outrageous. And much like the Grinch on Christmas Day, my heart grew 3 times, which maybe a big fat guy like me needs to be a little careful with my heart growing that much. But it just swells me with joy. It is remarkable to see these people squirm. If nothing else is accomplished during this Trump presidency, this would have been worth it. To watch the same people that with a smirk on their face, well, these investigations into Trump and his team, they're not political. They just really, Trump's just a criminal. We have to invest. We have to extend the statute of limitations in New York so Ejon Carroll can accuse him of sexual assault civilly. We have to, for the first time in history, have this convoluted law that ends up being the first time that we've convicted a former president of felonies. We'll do it in New York where he's super unpopular, and we're going to say that he broke a law by breaking another law by breaking a third law, which has never really been done before, but it doesn't matter, anything to get Trump. Or we have cases where he paid back with interest the loan he took out, and the banks were more than happy, but we're still going to say he owes like $500 million anyways because, whatever. All of that, the Russia collusion investigation, the illegal FISA warrants, it was all gravy. Hey, the bar for starting investigations very low. No one's above the law. We heard that mantra over and over. No one's above the law. And then there were people like me that said, you are aware that if the shoe ever gets on the other foot, you people will scream and you'll cry and you'll say, no, this is fascism. It's not fair. It's not fair. They can't have a weaponized FBI. If it goes after people politically, that'll be terrible. Yeah, who was it? Was it Adam Schiff? Someone I saw in the mainstream media the other day. They were doing an interview. They said, it doesn't even matter if they find people guilty. That doesn't even matter. The process itself's a punishment. Do you know how much money you have to spend defending yourself if the FBI looks into you? No. Say it ain't so. Really? No. That'd be terrible. We can't have that. And I said, you'll see, once you break the glass on this, turnabout's fair play. They said, that's fine. Yes, of course. Yes, of course. And now, turnabout. And they're like, this is fascism. No! Of course, my favorite person that does this is the great Pisco, lawyer that I debated many times over. Lackey of destiny, does whatever destiny tells him he's allowed. Pisco hasn't responded or said one word to me since the election. See, he's crying. His feelings are hurt. Oh, no. Poor Pisco. If only he would have made one more post on X going into the election about how a comedian making a joke about Puerto Ricans meant that the entire Trump team was racist against Puerto Ricans. If only he would have made one more thread on that, the Democrats could have won this election. Damn, he was so close. So close. Now he spends every day going, hey, Cenk Uyghur, why are you working with dark MAGA? They're sick people. They're very dangerous. Democrats, you can't work with dark MAGA. It's dark MAGA. They're so dark. They're sick people. This country, it's dark. It's authoritarian. It's fascism. And then when you're like, hey, Pisco, you doing all right? He goes, why are you crying? You're crying. You're the one who's crying. That's in a nutshell. There you have it. There's the left. You're crying. Dude, we ain't crying. We're laughing our ass off at you. But of course, he wasn't allowed to respond to me because Daddy Destiny told him he shouldn't respond to me or whatever. But today he responded because he put a post out where he was like, Trump, we had this House committee that was looking into January 6th, and we now know that one of the star witnesses of January 6th, Kathy Hutchinson, it looks like she lied, and it looks like she had private communications with Liz Cheney, which could be witness tampering. And so now there's suggestions for this Republican committee of possible criminal charges against Liz Cheney. And Donald Trump tweeted out, said, wow, it looks really bad. And Pisco said, this is authoritarian. This is fascism. This is fascism. I thought no one was above the law. Right? The bar for opening an investigation is very low. That's what I was told by Pisco and all of these lefties over and over. Any investigation into Trump or anyone connected to his team, the bar for opening, it's very low. Very low. Okay. That's the standard. Cool. That's what we'll go with. No problem. Sounds good. And now Liz Cheney being investigated. Well, apparently she is above the law. See, it's fascism. Why is it fascism? Well, I asked Pisco and his buddy Pondering, right? They're like, oh, I said, why is this fascism? But the investigations into Trump wasn't. Why is that? Pondering, of course, can't answer. He says Pisco answered. And Pisco says, because it's bad. It's bad. And it's clearly political. It's political, unlike the investigations into Trump. Let me just, now, from this conversation, lead several people that are like, I would like to talk to you. You're wrong about this, Rob. You're wrong. One of those people that may call in Friday, if not today, his stance is he's the centrist, right? These people are the best. He's like a Connor type centrist would be my guess. And this is what he'll say. I can't turn my hat backwards. This is lefty. This is me. So what's the centrist? The centrist, let's see, they're more ridiculous than anyone. So we'll do this. Is this a good centrist? Actually, as a centrist, what the left did was wrong. What the Democrats did was wrong. And so shame on you for now saying that the right should do it. Shame. Now's the time to stop the vicious cycle. Now's the time. Yeah, we get it. The centrist who every other post is about hating Donald Trump. That centrist. You know those people? You see, they didn't say much when the blatant lawfare was going against Trump. They didn't say much. But now that the shoe's on the other foot, they're like, whoa, now it's time to stop. And I'm a centrist. I really don't have a political party. I'm a centrist. So now's the time to stop. And then you guys stop. When Trump's there for 4 years, he stops. And then maybe Pete Buttigieg wins the presidency in 2028. And then they could redo the weaponization and I'll say, oh, maybe that's something to be frowned upon. Oh, well, Trump's still evil. He's terrible. And then they go ahead and do that weaponization for 4 to 8 years. And then if another, J.D. Vance wins after that, we say, now it's time to stop. Now we must stop the vicious cycle. Over and over and over and over, I've debated these people. When your side's in charge, they shouldn't be allowed to fight fire with fire. When the other side's there, they should be able to fight fire. Oh, I didn't make many comments. And how many times have you heard this? I said, I'll happily talk to you. Can you show me during the Trump-Russia collusion investigation where you were speaking up about how it was lawfare? Can you show me that? And can anyone guess what the excuse will be? Can anyone guess? What do you think the excuse is? I'll give you a clue. I've heard it dozens of times. Okay. Can you show me you're on X right now. You're on social media heavily posting about how an investigation into Liz Cheney is. It's ridiculous. It's too far. Can you show me those posts about like Trump-Russia collusion? Can you show me those? And he says, I can't because... Anyone care to wager a guess? That's not true, Tristan. That is not what is... Careful with that sort of language on the chat. Thank you, please. No, it wasn't the GPT thing. I hear it over and over again anytime I bring it up. Oh, there he is. It's this guy right here, Mr. Middleman. That's who it is. He's the centrist. He's the middleman. Can anybody guess what Mr. Middleman, why he couldn't bring anything up about Trump-Russia collusion? Wow, I'm disappointed in my own... There you go, okay. I didn't have social media then. I didn't have it. It's like one of my favorite shows to watch is Judge Judy. Love Judge Judy, right? And I can't tell you how many cases I've seen. I've brought this up before. This is 20% of Judge Judy cases is what happened. You have a case where someone's like, I lent this person $3,000 and they're supposed to pay me back $500 a month and they only paid me back 2 months and they haven't paid me back. And then the other person will say something like this. Yeah, I did. I paid them back and I got the text messages to prove it. They admitted to me in text that I paid them entirely back. And Judy will be like, well, that's fantastic. Can I see the text messages? And they'll go, I got a new phone. So I don't have those text messages. And Judy's like, it's amazing. Everyone that comes to court just got a new phone. It happens all the time. I just started social media. Just started it. I've only been doing social media for 2 years. So I wasn't around to make those sorts of commentaries. Wasn't around for that. Middleman, if you'd like to join and talk tonight, it looks like my other guest that was supposed to be here at 7 p.m. is going to be a time waster. Now, I will say, let me just double check to make sure I didn't give them the wrong area, or I said Eastern time. Yes, I did. Okay. Let's make sure that's what I said in the replies. It's at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So, I will say this. One of the things, as long as there's a legitimate excuse for this gentleman not being here, perfectly fine. But if there's not an excuse proffered as to why he wasn't here after he made a big production of, I would like to talk to you about this, I said, sure, let's do it. I hate when people waste your time like that. So obviously, if there's a real issue that came up and he's like, hey, I'm sorry, something came up at work, that's one thing. Other than that, I will not be talking to this guy again in the future. Not Middleman. Middleman's fine. I'm talking about the other person. But Middleman, if you'd like to call in, by all means. Did I put the invite out? Let's do it. I just don't care anymore about the people that are going to pretend. They didn't see the lawfare under Trump. It was all legitimate. This is the left's argument. So I already gave you the middleman argument. Here's the left's argument. You ready? Here's the left's argument. But Rob, Trump is a criminal. So when we investigated him, it's perfectly legitimate. The problem is he wants to investigate people that aren't criminals. And that's what makes it political. You see? When we investigate people, they're evil and they deserve it. When you do it to us, that's fascism. That's it. Of course, if Trump's such a criminal, how come the Russia collusion investigation wasn't able to find any crimes related to Russia collusion for anyone in Trump's camp? Yeah, Middleman, of course, I'm talking shit on you and I'll continue to talk shit on you. But honestly, totally game for being willing to call in. And obviously, you weren't scheduled to call in or anything like that. So if you can't, or if it takes you time, totally understand it. That's completely reasonable. The other guy, I'm not sure what happened. But he publicly accepted my offer, and then I DM'd him, and he said, yep, be there. So what is it exactly about Republicans looking into the January 6th committee that think that Kathy Hutchinson lied to the January 6th committee? She lied under oath. She should be in prison, right? All the Democrats will agree with that, correct? I understand that lie helped your side and you're going to be mad about that, but that's standard, right? And then if she's working behind the scenes with Liz Cheney that's compelling her to change her testimony, which strongly seems like that might be the case, then Liz Cheney also committed a crime. Yeah, I'll talk about the government shutdown if I find time. Right now, we're scheduling a debate that was going to be on the lawfare issue. If that debate falls through, I'll continue to talk about the lawfare issue, and then maybe we could get to the government shutdown later. Suffice to say, Democrats led the largest government shutdown in modern history. They didn't scream and cry and gnash their teeth then about how government employees weren't getting paid and FEMA wasn't getting money. They didn't give a shit because they didn't want the wall, because they wanted the border to be in the situation that we then saw it would be in. That's the skinny and the government shutdown. And of course, Republicans are the biggest threat to actual real populist change occurring in the government, because that populist change has to come through the Republican Party, which means that the people that are against that in the Republican Party are the biggest threat. And those are people like Mike Johnson that are going to write this disastrous bill that spends billions and billions of dollars while they say, shucks, what can I do? I also hate how much money it spends, but we got to do it. Also, I try my best to, I'm not perfect. I've screwed up. But just as an FYI, if you're ever involved in the streaming space or working with anyone, you're going to call into their show or whatever, if you tell people you're going to do something and you can't follow through with it, that's fine. Everyone understands that. But you probably should just send them a quick message like, hey man, sorry, can't do it tonight. Obviously, there are times when that can't happen. But more often than not, I find a lot of people intentionally waste my time when they don't show up, and it's never like they send me a message like, oh, shoot, here's what happened. It reminds you of League of Legends. That was just like a default stream elements thing that came up with that style of chat. So we entered this world. We entered it when Trump came down that escalator. The FBI decided, we're going to look into it. We're going to look into Trump. Remember, they officially said, what was it? The end of July 2016 is when they started their investigation into Trump. But we have an FBI whistleblower that says, actually, they were looking into Trump largely before then, on the orders of James Comey, then head of the FBI. They accused Trump of Russia collusion, working with Russians to get dirt on his opponent. And part of the way they tried to prove that was by taking dirt from a Russian that Hillary's team and the DNC paid for, that they never bothered to verify, that they then used to get FISA warrants to spy on Trump's team. That's how it all started. They said year after year, no, there was nothing untoward about that. Hillary's team didn't pay for that dossier, it was the RNC. Then when that was proven, well, they paid for it, but who cares? The information was true. Then, well, maybe the information's true, maybe it's not, but the FBI certainly looked into it. And then it was, well, the FBI didn't use this information anyways, and if they did, they would have verified it. And then it was, well, the allegations were so serious, the FBI had to look anyways, but it's not like this was illegal. And then it was, well, okay, the FISA warrants were illegal, but hey, they changed their policies, and what can we do now? It was a long time ago. Anyways, on to the next Trump investigation. And then the whole time you're like, oh, well, there needs to be a reckoning for, like, you know, what occurred to Trump and you people that lied and wanted this covered up. And they say, to investigate the investigators is fascism. That's fascism. You see, it's fascism. They investigate you, and when you investigate back, fascism. That's fascism. There is a complaint. There's a complaint to be made about investigations into political lawfare and possibly Liz Cheney being investigated. And the complaint is, why is it just Liz Cheney so far? They should have a lineup of like 30 people. Right? Who at the Secret Service allowed the deletion of Secret Service messages? Should be a criminal investigation. Who leaked all of this information from the Trump administration to the press from the intel agencies? Should be criminal investigations. No one's above the law. The threshold for starting an investigation is very low. Remember, that was the mantra. Oh, the IG report and the Durham report both said there was a necessary... the predicate for the investigation into Trump-Russia collusion was there. Because it's remarkably low. You basically need nothing to open an investigation. Of course, the tools in which they use, sending spies, illegal FISA warrants, etc., those were bad. But all that matters is there was grounds to start an investigation because the bar's next to nothing. Oh, you heard Russia might have interfered? Well, let's start an investigation. Didn't we hear over and over, including from our intel agencies, that Iran was trying to assassinate Trump and was interfering in the 2024 election? Well, we know that Biden's team gave money to Iran. They resent money, right? We know that at least one of the officials that were on Biden's team got a security clearance suspended for allegedly inappropriately giving information to Iran. Time to start an investigation. Get the FISA warrants. Let's start sending spies to everyone around the Biden team. Remember when they sent this hot chick named Azra Turk to flirt with George Papadopoulos? Let's get some Azra Turks out, right? Let's get them out to the Biden team, right? I mean, the allegations are so severe. We know Iran was interfering in our elections. They were trying to assassinate the now president-elect. We better start making sure that no one on Biden's team was connected to that, right? And if that means if that means while the FBI is investigating, they find crimes that people in the Biden team committed 9 years ago, completely unrelated, like they did with Paul Manafort in 2013, right? Well, so be it. Then we charge them for those crimes, right? And we purposely try to entrap people. We do that as well, right? Throw process crime. Oh, we think you lied. We think you lied. Throw the book at them, right? That's how it's done. That's what I was told. That's the standard that's been set forth. All right. We have the middleman, Mr. Middleman, it's going to call in here. Let's move him aboard. Mr. Middleman, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
I hear you just fine. Thank you. Before I tear you apart here, thank you so much for calling in. I do really appreciate it. A lot of people talk,
for sure.
We'll talk a big game on something like X, and then they don't want to call in. So I guess the best place to start would be your initial response to me. I could bring it up, maybe, if I could find it.
So initially, first off, I just putting it out there. My condolences for the loss of your dog.
Thank you, man. It means a lot.
I know how much that can hurt. I've dealt with something like that in the past year or so. So totally get it. Total sympathy there for you there. And I think also to start out, I kind of want to just say, I don't know if maybe pulling up the tweet would be a good starting point, because I feel like we've kind of spoken past each other a little bit in the Twitter interaction, and I don't know if that's
we'll just start. So me and Pisco are interacting back and forth. The initial response the initial post that I responded to with Pisco was him saying he posted a tweet of Trump's where Trump said, "Hey, Liz Cheney, and this looks bad," and he linked to the Republican report suggesting there needs to be a possible criminal charges or investigation into Liz Cheney. And he said, "I told you this is fascism." And I said, "You never saw an investigation into Trump you didn't like. Why is this fascism?" And then he goes on, he's just back and forth with me. And then he finally says, and this is on the screen, he says, "Check the replies, by the way. Rob is still crying about the Russia investigation and his fake conspiracies. Every conversation grounds down to, what about those FISA warrants? And while it gets boring to defeat such a stupid man so many times on the same topic." And then I say the following. I said, "I'm not crying. I'm enjoying all the winning. Pisco, you're the one screaming about dark MAGA every day. You're screaming in Republicans investigating Liz Cheney as fascism while you cheered on all the investigations into Trump. May you and all the politicians you support be treated to the same standards you wanted your opponents to be treated." And I put the little stoopy emoji that he always puts. And your response was, if I can find this, you said, quote, "I don't agree with Pisco's approach, but I think you may have actually surpassed him in smug arrogance and cringe posting. You've rubbed it in enough. Now you're just setting yourself up to look stupid when Trump starts breaking his promises. You are two sides of the same coin." So before we get into the rest of our interactions, lest you try to pretend, "Oh, I was just entering with humility, trying to have a serious conversation." You were not. You came in and said that I was going further with Pisco. I was worse than him because I'd rubbed it in enough. So just, where did you get the idea from this initial post? What was the smugness that I'd rubbed in so much? Can you explain to me what that was that you're referencing?
So I'll take the L on this initial tweet. So this response happened earlier than when our conversation started. This was on a different post.
But like minutes. So here's, if I could just explain where I'm coming from. I'm like working. Okay. So once in a while, I maybe check X like every 10 minutes. I'll just see if someone responded. Maybe you'll appreciate this. Being someone that's not like, I'm not like someone who's got tens of thousands of people responding. So you can actually see if someone responds to one of your posts. You might only get 5 or 6 people. So sometimes it's neat to check, right? To say, "Oh, I wonder what people are saying." I happened to see you respond to like 4 or 5 of my posts in rapid succession. So that was your first post. And I was like, okay, whatever. I'm not going to respond to that. And then you responded to like 3 or 4 more within like 10 minutes. And it was like, "Well, Rob, what do you think the repercussion should be?" And blah, 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 blah. So for me, I'm gathering a picture from collectively like 10 minutes of your tweets. It wasn't like you posted that and then a day later you were like, "Oh, and by the way," you would acknowledge that, right? This all came in sort of a grouping of posts that you initially made.
Yeah. And again, I'll take the L on this part. Maybe a little bit of triggered tweeting going on as far as that goes. So
you can understand then the tenure of my response would be like, what the fuck's this guy going on about? I don't get it. I don't know where you're coming from. So then from there, your posts were basically of the direction of, I don't want to put words in your mouth, so you can tell me if I'm incorrect, but you're basically inquiring like, well, Rob, do you think tit for tat, if you think what they did was corrupt, are you now suggesting that you'll endorse corruption because they deserve it? That's generally what your criticism would be, correct? Or your question would be?
Yes, I kind of. So that the criticism comes more in the fact that from what I've seen, and I totally admit the sort of I came in hot and with a lot of posts and stuff and stuff, but so my perspective is that I've seen, especially since the election, the Pisco crowd, the Josiah, the Pisco people, all making these arguments of, oh, the Republicans are these, fat. I mean, you know all the arguments that they've been
You're
making.
You're going to say fascist, right? It almost sounded like you used that.
They've been calling...
The way you cut that off, though, it sounded like you were going to use a different F word. I was like, shit, no.
No, fascist. I will,
gotcha.
I will be sure to, emphasize fascist. And the part that sort of triggered me into responding, and then I think Twitter, just the algorithm fed me a few more of your posts that continued to sort of trigger that in me to reply. That's hence the 3 responses in quick succession. But it almost looks like you're like almost an identical sort of reaction to the other side. Like, so what the Democrats are all saying right now is that when we get back into power, we need to stack the courts. We need to, like, they're talking about all these ideas of, Republicans are so bad and the conservatives are so bad and Trump is so bad that when we get power again, we need to make sure that they can't, like, and they spin it in a way that's like, oh, well, they're weaponizing it against us, and so we need to weaponize it against them as well. And it just came across to me as you basically making the same argument, but from the winner of the election side. So, I mean, again...
Yeah, so I could explain. I will explain.
Yeah, okay.
The tension from the initial post totally dispensed with now. So I'll explain my position. My position has always been this, that, of course, I have no problem with investigating political figures. For example, my argument with Trump the entire time was, if he committed a serious crime, he should be charged for it. I don't have a problem charging Trump associates with things like failing to register as a foreign lobbyist. For example, his chief of staff, Paul Manafort, was charged with failing to register as a foreign lobbyist. That's fine. But in the indictment, it said that he worked with Group A and Group B. Group B was the Podesta Group, who was the campaign manager, chief of staff for Hillary Clinton's team, the law firm he founded, and his brother. The problem I always had was the double standard in this application. And to me, the real villain in this story isn't Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden or Hunter Biden or Liz Cheney. I actually don't really care, mostly about whether or not they ever get held accountable for their crimes. The real problem are the investigators themselves. Why do we have a double standard at the DOJ and in the FBI and in other law enforcement agencies? That power has the ability to affect our system much more than any individual politician. No matter how much you hate Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, the truth is, if they become president, they'll only be there for a maximum of 8 years, or they'll eventually be out of office if they're a senator or whatever. But the FBI will remain in perpetuity. And so if we allow the FBI to influence our elections like this and our politics like this, to the point where even the opposition leader to Donald Trump in 2016, which to me, you tell me if I'm wrong, but I think after the defeat of Hillary Clinton, the de facto leader of the Democratic Party was either still Barack Obama Or when it came to an elected official, who would you think it was? Who would you say was the most powerful speaker for the Democrats that was still in office in 2016?
In 2016.
I'll just say, you tell me if you agree. I would say the leader of the Democrats in the Senate, who was Chuck Schumer. And Chuck Schumer went on national television and said that Trump was stupid for criticizing the FBI because they would find 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at him. And they did. They got illegal FISA warrants to spy on his campaign. They started never-ending investigations into Trump. And it just went into perpetuity. That's the real problem. And there needs to be real consequences, up to and including criminal prosecutions of people that abuse their power for political reasons. That certainly needs to happen. To a lesser extent, the politicians that helped facilitate that and cheered on those agencies being weaponized going after their political opponents, they should be held to the same standard that they suggested their opponents be, which is no one is above the law. The threshold for investigations are very low. And if you have nothing to worry about, then you shouldn't worry about an investigation into you. If that's the sort of mentality that a Joe Biden has, or a Hillary Clinton has, or a Liz Cheney has, why should my standard matter? Why isn't it their standard that would matter? And so there's two separate things. So that's what my opinion is. Now, on what you said specifically, I understand how at face value, if you're not really paying attention, you could say, well, it sounds like you're saying they got to be corrupt, so now we got to be corrupt. No, I still wouldn't choose for corruption. For example, I would not choose to intentionally get illegal FISA warrants like the Democrats and the FBI did against Trump. I would not choose that. What I would say, though, is if the legal standard is now that the threshold is so low for the DOJ investigating their political opponents, then that standard must be applied to both sides. As bad as I think it is that that's what the standard is, that's what the standard is. And we can't make our law enforcement system be a joke by saying, well, that standard only applies to one political side. And when it's the other political side, we say, we're above that. We think that's a bad standard. I liken it to this. I might not have liked back at the beginning of the NFL or professional football, even before the NFL, that they introduced the forward pass. I might be a football purist that says, no, football is about running the ball. It's about gridiron warriors, linemen pushing against each other. This forward pass nonsense, it makes the league a bunch of ballerinas. And yet, once the rules change to allow the forward pass, if one team says, we're so against that rule that we refuse to pass the ball forward, they will lose over and over and over and over again. So I could protest the way the standard has been set and say there needs to be accountability at these places like the FBI and the DOJ, and we need to have laws written that show that you can't do this anymore, or there need to be severe punishments for the politicization of these institutions. But until that day comes, the only chance that Democrats stop doing this, or forget Democrat, I don't even give a shit about that. The only chance that the people that cheered for the weaponization will stop doing that is if they suffer the same consequences they saw on other people. And the last thing I'll give you, and then I'll promise I'll give you a long time to respond. I was sort of in your team when it came to a less important, still important issue, but less legal issue, which was cancel culture. I saw the left over and over again wanting people canceled for comments they made when they were teenagers in yearbooks or edgy jokes that they made here or there. And I kept telling people cooler heads will prevail. Eventually people will have enough of this. But what happened was corporate America saw, geez, on one side we have right-wingers that if we say something that pisses them off, they just shake their fist and go, oh! And on the other hand, we have left-wingers that work with groups like Media Matters to literally sabotage us economically if we say something that they're pissed off about. I wonder which side we'll go with. And so it was only going to change once the other side decided, you know what, we're going to engage in the exact same tactics. Now there's people like Robbie Starbuck out there going company to company and saying, here's all the DEI shit that your company does. I'm about to report on this in 1 week unless you cancel this. And lo and behold, you know what's happening? They're canceling it. Nissan just today. Robbie Starbuck wrote a story about it. Now, as much as that pains me to say, I wish it wouldn't have came to that. And I'm not engaging in that shit. I think that I don't have the stomach for it. I'm kind of a live and let live guy. If it's something I don't like, I change the channel. I don't buy the product. That's it. I don't really talk about it much anymore. And anyone who's followed me for a long time would say, yeah, that's pretty much true of Rob. I get shit because I still watch football here and there, or because I let my kid watch Disney Channel shows. Right-wingers don't like that shit, but I do. It is what it is, But how do you tell those people, what was the end game going to be? Just let the left cancel everyone until we're all walking on eggshells? Oh, you can't say there's only 2 genders on X or you'll be kicked off. You can't say it on Twitch or you'll be kicked off. And if you're a corporation, you have to fund pride events or they're going to sabotage your advertising, etc. We just had to live with that forever? So that's what I would say in totality. For me, it's about investigating the investigators, making sure that this system of corruption changes, holding people to the same standard that they held others to. And unfortunately, until that happens, there is no reason that the people that weaponized law enforcement in the past, the Adam Schiffs, the Liz Cheneys, why would they ever change if they never face consequences? Oh, thanks for the raid, Jim Bob. By the way, one of my favorite people. I don't know if you've ever checked out Jim Bob's show. Even if you're a dirty middle centrist, you would like Jim Bob. He's a good guy. He's hilarious. So you should check out his show. Yeah, thank you.
So I think I have a little bit of a better understanding of your point now. And one of the things that in part of our exchange, I kind of asked for a clarification on what lawfare is, or what you would see as, facing like justice for the lawfare that happened on the other side, because that could be interpreted as either, okay, well, if they had gloves off to, endlessly investigate anyone until anything could be found that they could be charged with, it's like, are you advocating more for targeted, investigations to the people who are guilty of doing the lawfare on the other side, or is it more just like gloves are off, free reign? I think it sounds like you have more of a principled stance.
I don't want the gloves to be off, but I'm not going to raise my voice. I'm certainly not going to. It depends on how it would occur, right? So let's say it this way. Let's take politics out of it, right? And let's say that you're in a small town. I guess this is still be political, but it's a small level. You're in a small town, and the police chief is brothers with the mayor, right? And so he starts giving tickets for parking too far away from the curb to anyone who's he thinks is supporting a candidate that's not his brother, right? And the excuse that's given is, well, technically that's the law. And so, hey, if I see a car more than 6 inches away from the curb, the law says that I'm allowed to give them a ticket. And that to me then, if that's not going to change, if we're just going to say, okay, I guess there's nothing we could do, it won't change until all of a sudden that law is applied to everyone. Then the people that were okay with it would say, well, shit, this sucks. I don't want to start paying $100 every time I park 6 inches away from the car. That seems shitty. Maybe we should change this to say, whoa, we shouldn't be so loose and cavalier, even though technically it's within the realms of law. Because you have to understand this. I even got you to admit there are certain things that you view as political lawfare. Now, if you did view, for example, you think the Alvin Bragg case, this is your words, not mine, the Alvin Bragg New York case into Trump, you say that's political lawfare, correct?
Yeah, I don't remember. It was Bragg that the Stormy Daniels, that whole.
Yes, that
was Bragg's.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, then yeah, I think that was because there were so many different things that were specifically changed.
Correct.
In order to, yeah.
So then the question is, what should the consequence for that be? Because you are aware that there's all sorts of legal protections for a prosecutor, right? Technically, a prosecutor has so much discretion, it's going to be hard to file a legal charge against Alvin Bragg, even if we all know it was political. It's just like, well, what would you recommend? What should happen to Alvin Bragg? I mean, this was more political influence than anything Russia was accused of doing in 2016, and that was the biggest story in the country. It was the Democrats, one of their top 3 talking points, to say that Trump was a 37-time convicted felon on a bullshit political lawfare charge that they basically had to make up the rules as they went along, just because they blatantly wanted to take down Donald Trump. Now, I've debated lefties over and over that say that's not true, this wasn't political, but you're admitting it was political. So what should the consequences be?
So, I mean, so with that one, you bring up the fact that, that the other side is constantly harping on, oh, convicted felon, convicted felon, convicted felon, based on this. I would almost argue that, and they're, to a certain degree, if I feel like some sort of retribution or justice or whatever you want to call it it would be appropriate, but at the same time, the constant calling him a convicted felon, the whole case and the way that whole thing turned out, do you not think that was a huge factor in getting Trump elected, in changing a lot of people? Like, people already see, like, I don't know. I think that was more of a help to Trump than it was a hindrance.
Maybe not. I disagree, right? I do think that it definitely, there were some people in the middle that said this is a straw too far, but I think that straw would have been reached with them probably even before that, with the Letitia James that sort of investigation, or the Fani Willis investigation. So I think the people that thought the lawfare was too much probably already thought the lawfare. Certainly, it galvanized his base, right? Like, so people like me were even more like, oh, we got to get out there and make sure Trump wins even more. So I'm not going to dispute that it certainly helped Trump in some fields, but there probably were people that didn't look into this, or that had a propensity to just listen to traditional media that said, we can't help a felon be president. Certainly, the majority of the people that were saying that were never going to vote for Trump anyways. But can we be certain that the amount of people that were on the fence that were like, you know what, this puts me over the tipping point? And I can tell you right now, I know conservatives that personally told me they could not vote for a convicted felon, so they wouldn't be voting for Donald Trump. Now, I heavily suspect they would have found a reason anyways, but that was the reason they gave me. And so that's point one. I don't think that we could say that we're so certain that this attack helped Trump more than it hurt him. It certainly harmed his ability to campaign in days he had to be in court, and penalties that he had to pay, et cetera, paying lawyers, et cetera. But the other thing is, so what? So we just accept that side could do it with impunity, and hopefully it works out the same way next time? What if they would have thrown Trump in prison? Then what? What if we didn't simultaneously have Elon Musk buy X, so that social media could so fluently show how political this was? What if we were reliant on CNN and the New York Times and the Washington Post like we were in the past? So we just allow these people, we say, well, next time when they try it 4 years from now, we hope it works out the same way. And we just accept that we're going to have attorney generals all across this country in deep blue areas. We're going to prosecute anyone that we don't like politically, and we're just going to go after them. So shouldn't it, even if you're correct that it helped Trump in this unique circumstance, surely you could see it's still a problem and there need to be some sort of consequences, correct?
So yes, in a perfect world, I think that is true. But when we're looking at the overall karma of the situation, for lack of a better way of putting it, I think it's to get a little bit more meta, both sides have different things that they've done back and forth. I mean, I think that, weaponizing the legal system is definitely for me, a bridge too far. But the way it worked out, in a risk versus reward situation, I don't know that going after, blanket going after political opponents the same sort. So, and this is kind of comes back to what you've made your clarification. So, in my original understanding of your point, like, I misinterpreted it, I think, as that we should have, whoever we want to go after. We want to go after Gavin Newsom. All right, open 15 investigations, start digging until you find something, or AOC, or whoever.
No. No matter what, I wouldn't cheer for that. If there is a potential crime, right, then I say go for it. But you shouldn't make shit up. You shouldn't just say, like, for example, I'm unaware of anything allegedly illegal that, say, AOC did. So am I saying, fuck it, just start digging, you'll find something? No, I'm not saying that. But someone like Liz Cheney, where we see, okay, there is a serious question that there was this witness, Kathy Hutchinson, who it looks now an investigation showed lied, and she was against, without her lawyer knowing, contacting Liz Cheney, who didn't disclose it, who was then on the committee, who wasn't supposed to be contacting witnesses behind the scene, and then it seemed Cassie Hutchinson's testimony after in the dark contacting Liz Cheney seemed to switch dramatically. Seems that there's ripe for potential crimes that occurred there, an investigation. That's different than if we were unaware of any of that and I just said, I don't like Liz Cheney, start investigating, find something.
But that's where I would almost define, I almost wouldn't call that lawfare though. Like that, I think that there's a higher threshold for me using the term lawfare than investigating something that's already like a story of public interest. Like, for example, I wouldn't call, a lot of people on the left will call the Hunter Biden witch hunt lawfare. That, I mean, obviously his the gun charge or whatever that he got, yeah, that's probably not something he would have been charged with had he not been, politically associated with his father. But he's also the one who put himself in the arena by going out and getting jobs at these companies he had no business doing there, trying to use dad's name. Like,
the real story is he was charged with that because they were forced to charge him with something because whistleblowers spoke up that the FBI was covering for him. So they were forced to charge him with something. They originally gave him a sweetheart plea deal that would have basically let him off the hook for everything if he pled guilty to just the gun charge. But the judge in that case was like, wait a minute, this is an incredibly unusual plea deal. And there was enough public outrage that the prosecutors were forced to go, oh, okay, never mind, and sort of rescinded it. And then they gave him a slap on the wrist on the gun charge because what they were trying to avoid was a FARA charge, because they didn't want Hunter Biden on the eve of the 2024 election to be charged with illegally lobbying for hostile foreign entities, because then the American people would say, well, who was he lobbying to? Oh, his father? And his father's connections in Washington? And that would look very bad politically, not just for the Bidens, but also for all those former intel agencies that told you on the eve of the 2020 election that the Hunter Biden laptop story was Russian disinformation. So they didn't want that story coming out. So in effect, yes, they are right that normally the fact that you would go so many years later and charge someone for a gun charge like this, a gun charge that I'm sort of against anyways because I'm more of a Second Amendment person, they're technically right that he was only charged because of the unique situation who he was. But it's not he was only charged negatively because he's a Biden. It was positive. In other words, that he was covered up for and given this slap on the wrist. And so it would be the equivalent of saying, if I ran for Congress in 2019, which I did, right? And now the guy that won is pissed off against me, and no, that's not a good example. But let's say, I ran, and now 4 years later, they charge me with driving without insurance. You'd say, how many people do they do that to? Not many. But if the reason they did that was because I have connections to the prosecutor, and they're covering up that I embezzled $10 million from my campaign, well, now it makes sense. Oh, I'm being charged with something, anything, so that they can say, see, we charged him. But you see my point. So that's what was going on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. So maybe you can clarify a little bit more about this, because I mean, I have looked into the Hunter Biden stuff. But I work a job too. Like I don't.
It's difficult. That's right.
Go super autistic into the weeds.
Correct.
But my understanding is that yes, there was a sort of a sweetheart deal offered to him initially, but has he not been investigated pretty thoroughly regard. I mean,
it depends on who you ask. The same FBI that covered up.
A matter of like if there's nothing so. The part that feels very...
The IRS... So there are two IRS whistleblowers, Ziegler and Shapley, that both said that they saw clear evidence of shell corporations and all this hiding of money that was going all through the Biden family. They were told specifically by people at the FBI, Leslie Hunt, they were told specifically by her, you can't look into the big guy. You can't look into Joe Biden, right? They were told, they tipped off the Bidens before they were able to go into their accounts and their homes and look for evidence. Even the special prosecutor Weiss that looked into this, he admitted in the indicting documents on the gun charge in California, I believe is where the charge was, he admitted that Hunter Biden was lobbying for foreign entities, which is a clear violation of FARA, and yet none of the charges were brought. And the problem we get routinely is if I start with the supposition that I think the FBI is engaged in a double standard and corruption, and so they'll technically follow within the bounds of what they're allowed to do, right? This is how it works out. Like, I'll say this. They look at political people they don't like the Trumps, and they say, we will go after them using every tool we can. We'll use FISA warrants. We'll send human spies after them. We'll charge them with any little crime that we can and then turn the screws on everyone around them, hoping that they'll flip on the people above them. Then when it comes to the opposition of Trump, like Hillary's team, we will give everyone immunity. We'll just take their words for stuff. We won't charge any low-level people for any crimes. And the problem is, because of the way our laws are written, technically the FBI is allowed to legally do that. Because their discretion is so big, the same is true of prosecutors. They can decide. You would agree with this, right? A prosecutor doesn't have to bring a criminal charge anytime they think a crime has been committed. They could say, you know what, it's not worth bringing that charge. You would agree with that, right?
Yeah, they have the ability to do
right.
that, yeah.
So what happens then when these prosecutors decide we're always going to go as aggressively as possible against one side, which Chuck Schumer even said that's exactly what's going to happen, and then against the other side, they're like, well, we'll go as lightly as possible. And then what happens when I debate people on the left, they'll say, well, there was a thorough investigation. The FBI said they investigated it. So what can you do? You know? And this goes back to, again, all of this is just me. I don't give a shit. I'm just like you, man. I got a full-time job. I do this as a hobby. I live paycheck to paycheck. I work my job. I work with people adults with developmental disabilities. I do this because it's fun. I debate people that get paid by political action communities that are lawyers, right? I debate those sorts of people, right? When we go through this stuff, what I'm told over and over and over and over by them is, well, no one's above the law and the threshold and blah, 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 prosecutor discretion and blah, blah, blah. And I'll go painstakingly through each one of these cases. And basically my point's this. My life's not going to change if Donald Trump goes to jail. It's really not. Or if Don Jr. goes to jail. I don't give a shit. So I'm a simple man. I'll look at a situation and say, okay, let's look at this situation. There are Democrats that are suggesting that it's treasonous or it's somehow a crime that Don Jr. met with a Russian lawyer named Vesselnitskaya at Trump Tower. He met with her to try to get dirt on his opponents. Now, I don't think that should be a crime. I think it's shitty, but yeah, I assume that's what politicians are doing, meeting with people trying to get dirt in their opponents. Now, if you say, I'll give you favors if you give me the dirt, now we're in a different ballpark. But just listening to people talk shit, why not? Right? Sounds good to me.
Well,
but if your point, let me finish here. If your point is, no, I think that's a crime, I might disagree with you, but at least I can accept that that's your opinion, as long as you're willing to apply that opinion equally. So we know that Hillary's team was meeting with a suspected Russian spy named Igor Dushenko. Unlike Don Jr., who didn't get dirt on his opponent, Hillary's team did get dirt. And unlike Don Jr., who got no dirt, the dirt that Hillary's team got was disinformation. And unlike Don Jr., who didn't get the dirt and nothing therefore came of it, Hillary's information they got that was disinformation from a suspected Russian spy was then used by the FBI to spy on Trump's team. So if we're going to say what Don Jr. did was criminal, I disagree, but fine, as long as you say what people on Hillary's team did was criminal. But every time the answer is no. When they do it, it's okay. When Paul Manafort doesn't register as a foreign lobbyist, lock him up and throw away the key. But when Hunter Biden doesn't, or when the Podesta Group, people at the Podesta Group don't, well, that's fine. When Donald Trump's team allegedly seeks to obstruct justice by hiding documents the FBI is looking for that were subpoenaed, oh, that's obstruction of justice. We need to have an investigation. But when Hillary's team knowingly deletes subpoenaed emails, well, we gave them all immunity. What can we do? Oh, when Trump takes home classified information, send the FBI. This is a crime. Oh my God, it's terrible. When Biden does it, well, he's old and feeble, so we can't really charge him. Over and over. Donald Trump gets charged by Alvin Bragg because allegedly he basically committed a FARA a campaign expenditure violation, right? Campaign finance violation, right? That's why he was charged basically. But we know Hillary Clinton's team falsified business records in New York, which her team was stationed out of, and the FEC fined her for committing a campaign finance violation. So she committed the exact crime that Bragg was trying to say that Trump committed. Was she charged? Nope, no charge there. It's every single time. So I don't give a shit. As a layman, I'm like, okay, I personally think that 90% of Washington fucking sucks. So if we're going to say, hey, you know what? Everyone mishandles classified documents in Washington, throw all their asses in jail. I'd say, fuck it, sounds good to me. But that's not what's happening. What's happening is we're only going after one side politically. And so what pisses me off then is when I've been fucking screaming about this for 8 years and I've had smug assholes on the left telling me like, oh, this isn't political. What are you talking about? No one's above the law. And there's prosecutorial discretion. And the bar for opening an investigation is so low. So technically the FBI is allowed to do all this stuff. It's technically legal. Okay, fuckhead, if it shoes ever on the other foot, you're going to scream and say, no, this is bullshit. You can't do this to us. This is fascism. Fuck those people. I'm not saying that's you, by the way, but I'm saying I don't want to hear word one from the people that sat here and defended this obvious political attacks on their opponents and the obvious double standard now saying, well, wait a minute, cooler heads need to prevail. Bullshit. Those people deserve to be held to the same standard. And by the way, this is true of other things. If you cheered on people being censored for vaccine disinformation or for saying that the pandemic came from the wrong place or for questioning the 2020 election, then you fucking deserve to get censored for that shit now. If you were perfectly fine with Democrats and the Biden administration pressuring social media companies to censor people like me, then you shouldn't have a fucking problem if Trump's team pressures social media companies to censor people like you. That's not what I want. I don't want Trump, and I'll stand up for those people, but that's what those people fucking deserve. So I owe them nothing. And I think it's hilarious that the biggest ones of them, people like Pisco, that cheered on every single fucking investigation into Trump, is now out there without any explanation whatsoever saying, well, looking into Liz Cheney would be fascism. That's where my comments were coming from today. In a perfect world, I agree. Let's go back to the Bragg situation. In a perfect world, if we both agree that this is political, then the person who needs punished is Bragg. You would agree with that, right? Why should some random Democrat who committed the same crime that they're trying to get Trump for, why do they need to be prosecuted? Well, they wouldn't. Bragg's the one who politicized the institution. He's the one who should pay the piper. But the way the laws are written, there's such protection against prosecutors, there's really no consequence for Alvin Bragg. And not only is there no legal consequence, the guy's career is made. If he stopped being a prosecutor tomorrow, he would get hired at MSNBC the next day and would be making 6-7 figures. He's a hero for all of the people in political power in our establishment and on the left. So what's the next best thing you could do to make sure... Last point. What's the next best thing you could do? Charge Hillary Clinton. Then maybe once the left sees, oh shit, once the Democrat and the pro-establishment people see, oh, geez, now we could face the same legal consequences that we celebrated our opponents, maybe then they'll say, maybe we should come together and see if we could do something collectively to make sure this shit stops, even if it's just for self-preservation reasons. Maybe now's the time to make sure, hey, it's not a good idea if we encourage every attorney general in every state in this country to find any reason they can to go after any politician from the opposition party. Maybe we should sit down and try to make sure that this shit's not occurring. Maybe we shouldn't have the DOJ and the FBI announcing and bragging about perpetual investigations into the political opposition. Maybe that's not such a good idea. And it's not going to. It's not going to. Wait, not until.
You really think that's going to be their response to it?
Let's say there's a 5% chance. What do you think the chance is now that they'll do it without that occurring? 0. So if the goal is to end
there's a 0% chance. I guess there was a lot there to respond to, and I had a couple things I was going to say, and I've completely lost my train of thought on them. But so I guess the meta kind of point that I'm making here, and you kind of touched on it with the cancel culture thing earlier, is like, okay, so they started with the cancel culture, and now there's people on the right who are basically using their tactics against them. Okay, so when does cancel culture, when does it go away? Like, when is that not just a part of our everyday, that's just baseline, now a thing that everyone has as a tool in their belt to use because both sides have now normalized and engaged in it?
Yes, it's a better chance that cancel culture will end now than there was 6 years ago. Because 6 years ago, one side had all the power with cancel culture and everyone was in perpetual fear of it. Now, what you're most likely to see is it to go back to a time, I don't know how old you are, but there's this famous quote from Michael Jordan, who's quite possibly the most highly paid endorsement ever with Nike, with Air Jordans. And they asked him a political question one time, and his response was, Republicans buy shoes too, right? That's sort of where corporate America used to be. That's where we were as a culture before it all started getting radically more and more to the left. Now you're going to see that pendulum swing back. It may swing too far, and I'll be that. And I certainly do my fair share of arguing with people on the right that I think, in fact, the past 3 weeks of my show has been almost exclusively arguing with people on the right because I think certain things are going too far in the other directions or could go too far. So I'll be there arguing if it does. But we're further ahead from cancel culture being a thing of the past today than we were 6 years ago, because now people are understanding, like, look, fuck it. I'm just going to either say my mind no matter what, and I don't give a shit what the consequences are, and enough people are fed up and tired of it that they're just going to say, yeah, you do you. Or I'm just going to focus on what I normally do. I sell products. I'm an artist, whatever. And I'm not going to wade into topics that I'm really not qualified. I'm going to play basketball. I'm going to make cars. I'm going to do... The problem was there was no end in sight until the other side started playing the game. Now there's at least a chance that that enough people in the middle will say, you know what? We're tired of the game. Where was that chance 6 years ago? Where was it? What would your suggestion have been just with the cancel culture? Do you think the right was wrong to engage in it? As someone that's allegedly on the middle, do you think that someone like me should have perpetually taken demonetization, censorship, etc.? We should have allowed corporate America to become more and more left-wing because they're fearful of the left-wing cancel culture mob. And the right should have never done anything except what? Just, I know what you're going to say, but go ahead. They should have said, this is wrong. And then, yep, sure. And keep going.
Not necessarily. Well, first of all, the premise, I think, of the fact that the right started engaging in cancel culture to somehow cancel it out or to open people's eyes to, I think that cancel culture was going to eventually, everyone was going to get sick of it anyway.
Bullshit.
But
fuck you, liar. Yeah, you know, imagine saying this in like other movements. Hey, you know, so what? You lose your job, you're destitute, you're homeless, and all your friends that stuck up for you politically, same for them. But don't worry, 30, 40 years down the road, people will get tired of this shit. How's that working in the UK?
Okay,
How's that working in the UK right now where you can go to jail for telling a joke? How's that working? I'm sure it'll work out. No one should... don't dare go after the people on the left that might do this. Don't dare, right? Instead, people on the right, if you make a joke that's considered transphobic, take your medicine and go to jail and pay your exorbitant fine, but never, ever, ever report the left-wing people that make what you think are offensive jokes. That would be morally wrong of you. And eventually people will get tired of it. Fuck that. Bullshit. It's easy to say when you're not affected. It's very easy to say.
Well, can I expand on make my full point here instead of just the initial sentence here? I don't think that. I mean, I think that cancel culture. I don't think that the other side engaging in it. It may have squashed it out a little quicker, but I don't think that people, even from the initial wave of cancel culture, if you look back to like the Louis C.K. stuff or, with comedians or things like that, I think a lot of people were afraid to speak out against it at first, but the more instances of cancel culture that happened, the as it went on, regardless, people were realizing how bullshit it was.
That's not true. They might have, but they were afraid to say anything. Nope.
Right.
It didn't start. When do you think the right started using cancel culture? Give me the year.
I don't know. I feel like they don't engage with it the same way the left.
That's right. They don't. But even still, they at least started to fight back. So, for example, if the tide started turning when corporations realized, because you have to understand, the way that culture works is it's constantly ongoing. And it's little things that are repetitive over and over. And that's what drives culture to shift into certain ways. And when there's so many things that drive culture, academia, the entertainment industry, corporate America, all of these things are working simultaneously. It's not an exact science saying, well, 33% of culture comes from the music industry. It doesn't work that way, right? It's more subtle. And when everybody knew, well, you can't say shit. You can't say shit about certain things. You just can't. And so you have to toe the line. And it wasn't until they said, you know what, there are consequences for towing the line. If we toe the line and we're a product like Bud Light and we toe the line and 80 to 90% of our consumers are people that despise this line we're towing And now they're going to say, know what? We're not going to drink your product anymore. And it hurts them in the piggy bank. Now they'll change their tune. They weren't going to change their tune and say, you know what? We think cancel culture is stupid. We think it's stupid. Even though it hasn't affected us financially, we're just going to take that risk and say, you know what? We're going to open ourselves up to Media Matters and the left's cancel culture, just because. And you're right. The way
to defeat cancel culture, isn't it in when cancellation happens, you support those people being canceled so that they aren't canceled.
Who?
At this point now,
did that work?
The people. Yes, it works.
No, it didn't. It did not. Show me that working. Give me an instance of that work. Tony Hinchcliffe. That occurred. Tony Hinchcliffe occurred well after the right started playing by the same games as the left.
I'm talking about his cancellation with the comedian that went after him in, what was it, 4 years ago?
Well after the right started fighting back.
But I don't think that the right canceling anything.
How'd it work out for Roseanne Barr?
She lost her show, yeah.
Yep.
But
how's it working for her? A lot of people said, we're going to support her. That sucks. How'd it work out for her? She get her show back? She getting hired in Hollywood? She getting hired? Any projects coming up you know of?
No. I haven't folled Roseanne.
How about Gina Carano? How'd that work?
I mean, I think she has way more followers, way more support, and she's not.
She's doing Daily Wire shows.
Right.
Nowhere near the cultural impact she had when she was doing a Disney show. And even that, she's probably going to come out and head. You want to know why? Because she's fighting back with a lawsuit. Because they're fighting back. Now, me and you, but that would be against. But wait a minute, that would be against. You just said the ways to support her. Lawsuit, that would be too much.
No, I don't think it's if it's a wrongful firing or something like that. Like, obviously, yeah, a lawsuit is appropriate.
The point I'm trying to make is this. That the culture wasn't going to start shifting back. It would have continued to get more and more. It's simple game theory. If I say, I'm allowed to you're morally evil, so there are no rules for me. I could punch you in the face, I could steal from you, I could do whatever I want. And you say, no, there are rules of engagement. I can't lie, I can't steal, I can't get physical. And we compete against each other thousands of times. I'm going to win in the long run. That's what's going to happen, right? The same is true of our culture. If one side says we're going to use cancel culture to shape culture to the direction we want it, and it's working, the pendulum won't begin to shift back until equal tactics or similar tactics are used on the other side. And you're right. The tactics aren't even remotely similar. They're not, right? Me saying and getting a bunch of people together and saying, hey, let's not drink Bud Light, fuck them. That's different than saying, I'm going to go back through the Bud Light guy's yearbook and see a post he made when he was in 9th grade and try to get him fired. That's different. Those are different levels. But even still, and I still don't support that level. In fact, the closest that came to that, and I kind of was grossed out by this, but I understood why it happened. Did you see the clip of after the first assassination attempt, there was this woman who was an elderly lady who worked at Home Depot, and she put up on social media like, too bad that bullet missed, I wish it would have got him, something to that effect. And some dude recognized her at his local Home Depot and went in there with the camera and was like, this is the fucking lady that wishes that Trump had been killed. And she got fired. And I kind of fucking think that sucks. But that's clearly far more egregious than some 8th grader writing something in his yearbook 20 years ago. The type of shit. I agree. But so I understand why it happened, but all of a sudden, whoop, people were less willing to just openly say that shit. Jack Black with, Tenacious D, Kyle Gass, his partner. Remember, he said, so the point I'm trying to make is, I'm not saying that we should do all the unethical shit. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, I wanted cooler heads to prevail. It wasn't. The culture didn't start changing until all of a sudden people said, okay, if it makes sense. There are certain industries that cater to traditionally left-wingers, certain ones that cater to traditional right-wingers, certain that maybe don't cater to any. It's just like, you make tires or something that everyone uses, or people that cater to everyone, etc. If the left has cultural control because they'll threaten to cancel any of these corporations that they're the predominant consumer base for, and so that forces them to shift that way in culture, why shouldn't the right do that?
Well, because going back to your game theory analogy, if there's two parties that are engaging in a competition against each other, one is allowed to is cheating, and the other one doesn't cheat. You're right that the cheater is gonna end up winning. But I think when both people cheat, or if it's a fight or whatever, you where do you end up? You end up, one party, or either you both lose or one party remains and you're standing over a pile of ashes that's not worth.
So then, from the perspective,
the whole world blind.
So so then your perspective is this: Rob, as a right winger, yes, the other side's cheating and you're 100% guaranteed to lose, but you should accept that. Because as someone on the middle, you're okay with that because that doesn't really affect you. But if our side starts playing by the same rules, then it could lead to everyone being blind, that would affect you. So you're if you're arguing from a place of, well, this is where I'm not targeted by the cheating left. So Rob, even though I just gave the example of you're right, you will lose, you should accept that loss for me. And I say, fuck you. I refuse to accept that I need to be buried and lose because it might hurt your feelings. Go fuck yourself. I'm sorry, I don't find it persuasive for you to say you need to play a rigged game that you're guaranteed to lose because if you start playing by the same rules as them, then it might affect me too. Fuck you. That's my answer to you.
That's not what I'm saying.
Did you not just say, in your metaphor, didn't you just say, yes, when one team's cheating, that means that they will win and the other team will lose. But the problem is if both teams cheat, then an eye for an eye makes everyone blind.
Right. So
you've acknowledged it. Your last point.
The answer is to stop the other team from cheating, not to engage in sync to their level.
And what way do you stop them from cheating?
I mean, that's a good question. And that's why I'm not only sitting here, first of all, I'm not only sitting here criticizing the right. If you look through my Twitter history, I get way more triggered at people like Pisco and Josiah and the way that they comport themselves and the way they advocate for a bunch of bullshit, like stacking the courts and doing all sorts of the tit for tat argument on their side as well. I think that it's leading in a bad direction all around. So I've yet
to hear your suggestion. Go ahead. You're telling me, yes, the way the game's playing out, you're guaranteed to lose. So you have to change how the game's played. Now, you might win if you start playing by the same rules as them, but that could affect you. So you're saying, don't do that. Don't do that. Instead, what you should do is, and you have no suggestions.
Well, there's different. We need to find a way to figure that.
Give me a
out.
suggestion. I don't have. Give me a suggestion.
A suggestion that I would say is that I think whatever side ends up taking the high road on this will win in the long run.
Bullshit. Lies. Again, where was your side in 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20? How was your side doing then? Was it saying, oh, we're all going to be right-wingers? We're all going to be right-wingers now. We're voting for Donald. Now, I'll tell you where your side was. I see people, maybe not you specifically, but I see people that make the same argument like you, dime a fucking dozen. They would all say, yeah, man, this lawfare against Trump and stuff, it looks shitty, but Trump's Trump. I can't vote for him. I can't support him. That's what you would say. You would say, these shit lib centrists all the time, the Eric Weinsteins of the world, over and over, they're like, oh my God, look at the abuses in academia of the radical left. It's disgusting. But I can't vote for Republicans either. I can't do that. I'm going to remain centrist, but I will say, shame. For shame. I'm sorry, fuck you. That does nothing. Why? How could I explain to my side as a right-winger, hey, let's go with Middleman's perspective here. I'm giving you an option that'll give you a 50% chance to win. He's giving you an option that gives you a 0% chance to win. And he doesn't have any ideas. He just has a gut feeling that, well, if you keep taking fat L after fat L, enough people in the middle like him might say, you know what? We're going to become right-wingers. They haven't done it yet. Did you vote? Did you vote for Trump? Did you vote for Trump?
No.
Did you vote for Trump in 2020? Were you old enough?
No, I didn't.
Huh. Wow. You sound like every other centrist I've heard that says, no, we get what they did to you was corrupt, but please don't respond in kind. Because eventually your side will win. Your side's above the fray, so your side will win. But I still didn't vote for you. I still didn't. But trust me, eventually I would if you keep taking loss after loss after loss. I mean, come on, it's a fucking joke. Just admit it. Admit that you're looking out for yourself and for your position. You weren't the one. You're not the type of person that's being affected negatively by this shit, so you don't give a fuck. And you're afraid that that you'll get caught up in the middle if both sides decide to engage in the same sort of behavior. I don't give a fuck. I just don't. I'm sorry. I sympathize with you. I wish that cooler heads would prevail. They won't. And you're the example of why. When you see the blatant lawfare, how could you see this lawfare against Donald Trump, which you've admitted, at least in the New York case, was just that? It seemed that you also gave sort of homages to perhaps the Russiagate investigation was that as well, and yet you still didn't vote for Trump.
Yeah,
in fact, did you vote Democrat?
No.
So who'd you vote for?
Both times libertarian. Well, yeah, both times libertarian.
Okay. That's fine. Piss your vote away. I know real libertarians that would tell you shouldn't vote for Trump. Nonetheless.
Yep, I know that.
But the point I'm trying to make is, like, aren't you the exact example of why that fails? You see the blatant lawfare? Would you acknowledge that the lawfare coming from the Democrat side was far worse than what was coming from the right-wing side? Or cancel culture was far worse coming from the left than was coming from the right? Yet still...
Oh, for sure, yeah.
But you still couldn't vote right-wing. You still couldn't. How many years would it have taken before you said, you know what, maybe I will vote for the right-wing this time?
I have a particular problem with Trump, and it's probably more than what we want.
How did I call that? How did I call that in our X exchange? How did I know that? Just say the truth. I hate Trump, so I'm okay with this shit. Just say it.
I hate Trump, though. That's the thing.
Let me rephrase. I have a particular problem with Trump, so I'm okay with this.
I'm not okay with it.
Yes, you are. You didn't punish it.
I think if you can, there needs to be a way to punish the cheating without it both sides stooping to the lower and lower level.
Well, you could have voted. You and millions of people like you could have voted for Trump in 2020. You chose not to.
Yeah. Well.
And now you're complaining. Now that Trump has won, oh, please don't do what they did to you that I thought was corrupt.
Oh, I'm more happy that Trump ended up winning than Kamala for sure.
Okay, but you still didn't vote for him, right? Again, your entire argument seems to be this, Rob. If the right, what the left is doing is so egregious, if the right just doesn't play that game, right, then eventually all of us in the center will come to the right. And you're like, oh, okay, do you find what the left's doing far more egregious? Absolutely. So you've came to the right? No. Okay. So then what's your particular... So 2020, you didn't vote for Trump. Going into the 2020 election, what's your particular problem with Trump? Why you couldn't vote for him?
Going into 2020, let me think.
Because I know what you're going to say now. You're going to say January 6th or the alternate electors?
No, going into 2020.
Right. That's what you're going to say for 2024, though, right?
Yeah, that's...
Yes. How do I know? It's almost like I've talked to you before.
It's almost
or
like
hundreds of people
that happened.
It's almost like I've talked about hundreds of... So let's skip 2024. You didn't vote for Trump in 2020. You thought that the lawfare, the Russiagate, was obvious lawfare against him. So what was your reason for not voting for Trump in 2020?
The media weaponized that against him. I thought that there was a reasonable reason to investigate the Russiagate investigation.
What was that reasonable reason? What's the reasonable reason?
There was I don't have all the information up still in front of me.
That's fine, but you have a gut feeling is why you believe that.
I at the time, or not at the time, but I have looked into it since, and I think that the Russiagate stuff, there was some weird shit with Russia being involved with different things. Was what's his name? Is it Manafort? Is it yeah, Manafort? That he's the guy that was talking and trying to get the was it the WikiLeaks stuff?
No, that was all debunked. The WikiLeaks shit came out after it was released publicly. That Don Jr. They switched a news story that say that Don Jr.
Isn't Manafort? He has Russian connections.
Paul Manafort talked to a Ukrainian by the name of Konstantin Klemenuk and shared campaign and shared polling data with him. Konstantin Klemenuk was considered so trusted by the Obama State Department that they frequently used him as a source to help negotiate when they were doing stuff with Russia. So he was good enough to be trusted by Obama and his State Department. But when Paul Manafort talked to him, a Ukrainian by the way, and gave him polling data, that was enough to say, clearly Russia interfered. Can you explain to me why Paul
Well,
Manafort
so-
giving polling data to a Ukrainian that was trusted by the Obama administration shows that there's something to the Russia investigation?
I didn't come here prepared to do the Russiagate investigation. Maybe I do need to look into it again, and maybe I could.
Well,
come back on and
nonetheless,
have a
okay,
conversation with you
fair enough. Let me
on that.
backtrack then. So then you're going into 2020. Going into 2020, you're like, maybe there's something fishy with this Russiagate stuff and the way the media is portraying it. But Paul Manafort did talk to this Russian.
I think my opinion on Trump in 2020 was more along the lines of him being pretty ineffective. I, at the time, was a lot more libertarian than I am now, and sort of felt that he had a failure to prevent a lot of the Fauci, the lockdowns, the mandates and stuff like that.
Can you give me just curious, can you give me a president in the last 60 years that you think was effective as a libertarian?
No. I mean,
I would agree with that. I'm libertarian adjacent. Yeah. Right. I'm libertarian adjacent. I would agree with that. So then the question becomes, if your argument is that people like you that are sort of in the middle, right, will eventually come to the side of the right if the abuses of the left are too much, and you're agreeing the abuses of the left are already too much, but you're like, but I still can't vote for Trump because as a libertarian, I find his policies to be, quote, ineffective, then you're never going to find a Republican candidate. You're never going to find a Republican candidate for office that you think that the corruption for the left will outweigh their, quote, ineffectiveness. Because you've just told me that you can't think of a candidate, Republican or Democrat, for the past 60 years that you would have thought was effective. Which means your excuse will always be, well, I'm always going to vote third party no matter what. No matter how bad the abuses of the left get, because I'll just say, yeah, but the Republican would be ineffective. He's not going to be fiscally conservative. So, even though I'll wag my finger at the abuses of the left, I'll say, but whatever you do, right, don't fight back. Because if you don't fight back long enough, eventually, maybe I'll vote for you. But I won't because I'll always say that you're ineffective. So tell me again why we should listen to you if we don't already agree with you? Shouldn't we say, oh, fuck this guy. He's never going to come to our side no matter what. So who gives a shit that he's telling us, adopt this strategy that you have a 95% chance of losing. He's lying. He's not going to come to our side. He's just said it. So why should we listen to him?
I've never said that I'm never going to come to your side.
Okay, so then explain to me.
I voted for Romney in 2008, or 2012.
You're making the case worse for yourself.
Yeah,
sure.
Well,
as a libertarian, you voted for Romney. Romney care.
I wasn't as libertarian at that point. I don't know. I've been through a progression, but you know, I think the overall point though is that where I see myself in the arguments that I make and what I'm advocating for, and hopefully someone on both sides will come to a realization that this is not a sustainable way of continuing discourse on both sides. So I'm not saying that you have to lay down your sword and not respond to the cheating.
The only way that they come to that conclusion is once it's evident to them that it's not sustainable on both sides. And that only happens when both sides do it. If one side keeps doing it, then to that side, it looks mightily sustainable because there's never any consequences. Now let's take it from the realm of cancel culture into lawfare. Why would it stop if there's no consequences? If Alvin Bragg gets away with this, and there's zero consequences, and Democrats win in 2028,
and they decide for no consequences.
What's the consequence?
I'm advocating
What's the consequence?
The kind of consequences.
Okay, wait. Then tell me what, because you've already conceded there's basically nothing you could do to Bragg, right? Technically, what he did's within the bounds. So then, what would the consequence be? How's this going to change?
I think a clear and targeted and limited response in kind.
Like what? Give me an example.
Acceptable. So,
what's the most apples to apples case you could think of Trump and his campaign finances in 2016? What's the most apples to apples comparison?
The Hillary.
Cool. So you agree with me? She should be charged.
I wouldn't call that lawfare though.
Okay. Well, then I don't understand what your criticism is.
So my criticism is the impression that, and it feels like you've kind of flirted with the idea, but sort of backed off of it here, that, like, you know, you wouldn't like it if it was just an outright, start investigating AOC until you find something kind
Of
of
course, I
lawfare.
would
That
always
be
be
what
against that.
I know you would be against that,
Yeah.
but at the same time, earlier on, I don't remember exactly the phrasing you said, but I'm not going to lose sleep over, or I'm not gonna,
I'm not going to listen to
cry
those
about
people
it
that
if-
cheered. If my theory is this, right? Me and you might, if we're neighbors, right? We might sit here every day. Maybe you're fucking a big Hillary fan or Biden or Kamala. I don't give a shit. I have plenty of friends that are left wing. I really do. And we're just shooting the shit. And we might both be. And I have Democrat friends I've had this exact conversation with. It's like, man, I wish this shit would stop. It's fucking crazy. It's crazy. And they're like, yeah, me too. It's fucking nuts. And every time I'm like, you gonna vote Republican? Nah, I'm still gonna vote Democrat. Okay. But we want it to end. And I believe those people that I'm talking to want it to end. And let's say for the sake of argument, I believe that you want it to end, right? The problem is, right, like, even though that's what I want, I don't want Hillary Clinton charged for campaign finance and get 37 felonies for what she did in 2016. I think that's fucking stupid. So for me, I think it would be basically tantamount to lawfare to go after her for that. It's not what I want. In a perfect world, I would say that's fucking nonsense. This is silly. What are we talking about here? Couple $1,000? Are you fucking kidding me? And we're gonna go after a president like this is the world we want, where attorney generals in any state could go in front of a jury that's heavily red or blue and go after their opposition with impunity? That's fucking crazy. That's what I'm talking about in large part when I'm talking about lawfare, that sort of shit. But it's within the legal bounds. So you saying I don't call that lawfare, I guess I don't understand then. I don't think you would have any objection to anything I'm suggesting then. Because certainly, and I've told people that if Trump's team, let's put the shoe on the other foot. Let's say Trump's team 2 years from now decides, oh, it's obvious the front runner against me is going to be Josh Shapiro, which it may well be. The Democrat front runner at this point might be Josh Shapiro, my governor here in Pennsylvania. And so let's say 2 years from now, Trump says, you know what we're going to do? Let's pay for a dossier saying that Josh Shapiro has connections to China and he likes to get pissed on and, all this shit. And then we'll send it to the DOJ and they'll use that to open an investigation into Josh Shapiro's team, right? And let's get a FISA warrant. I think that's fucking egregious. That's outrageous. I don't want that.
Would that be a deal breaker for you in voting Republican on that ticket if the assuming JD Vance or whoever is
if they didn't condemn it, if
he supported it or he participated?
Correct. If he supported something like that, if they got FISA warrants and shit, the problem would be this. I would accept, but I would. So what I am yes, I'm saying if they get illegal FISA warrants intentionally using disinformation that they knew that they fed and then participated in that would be disqualifying to me. However, what wouldn't be disqualifying, which I also wouldn't want to see, but unfortunately probably has to happen, is, there's allegations here in Pennsylvania that Josh Shapiro maybe embezzled some money here or there. Let's investigate. It's legal. The threshold's very low. And we've set the standard. We've set the standard. Almost every institution in this country, former intel heads, media people, academics, they all said, yes, when this occurred to Trump, it was completely legitimate to do it. And so that will never change. The champagne bottle has been opened and it's sprayed everywhere. And the only way to say maybe it's time to clean up the champagnes if it starts spilling on the other people. Then maybe they'll say, you know what? This has gone too far. We shouldn't have a system where the team that wins gets to use the FBI as their personal investigative agency to go after their opponents. The threshold for going after political opponents, unfortunately, should be higher than going after an average person. We don't want a system like other banana republics where the party in power gets to weaponize the justice system to go after their opponents. But the only chance we get there is for the people in that justice system to be held criminally accountable. And the only way they're going to be held criminally accountable is if there is enough coalition from people on both sides of the aisle to say this shit must stop. And that will only occur when the people wishing these consequences on others suffer those consequences themselves. Let me give you an easy example. Do you think it's likely that Nancy Pelosi's committed insider trading?
I don't know too much about it, but I mean, that's my impression. Yes.
So would you have a problem with Trump's DOJ investigating her?
If they, not really.
But it would obviously be political, right? They're probably not going to target her unless she's Nancy Pelosi, right?
Well, I don't think she could be insider trading unless she's having the ability to insider trade is because she's Nancy Pelosi in the position that she's in. So,
oh shit! I please finish it, and then I got to say some shout outs here. People are donating monies and stuff. Sorry, please go finish. Sorry. I'm sorry.
I think I was just about finished, but like I think because she's Nancy Pelosi, that's the only way that she could possibly even be insider trading. So how else would that ever be investigated other than they would?
But the problem is there's probably
always be called political,
right? But the problem is there's probably 100 people in Congress that applies to. So why just go after Nancy Pelosi? Right.
Well, go after all of them then.
Okay, but what if they don't? What if they just go after Pelosi?
Well,
for me, I agree with you. Go after all of them. That's exactly what my position would be.
But
if they just go after Pelosi, it's clear that she was singled out. Would you be okay with that?
If there were, I wouldn't be okay with an endless like blanket, if a directed investigation into the insider trading. Yes, I'd be totally okay with that.
Okay. Well, that's what I'm talking about. That's not something that I want to happen. I don't want it to be obvious, like, fuck you, Nancy Pelosi. You're one of the leading voices that cheered for my prosecution and leading voices of the opposition. And so now you're going to be investigated for what we see as evidence that most likely points to crimes. I would rather that not happen in an ideal world. I would rather all of them be investigated and not just signaling one. That's sort of my position on the failing to register as a foreign lobbyist. The truth is, it's one of the worst kept secrets in Washington that this literally, it's like everyone in Washington's lobbying for foreign people. All these lawyers and shit. Yeah. We know it. And rarely are they filling out the paperwork. The problem's that they selectively, it's the same with mishandling of classified documents. Everybody's doing it. But the problem is the selective look at it. And what I'm suggesting is, I would rather all of them be investigated, but that's not what's going to happen. And so what's likely to happen is they're going to say, look, if we see blatant evidence of people in the opposition that's doing this shit, we're investigating them. And I'll guarantee you that every New York Times writer and CNN contributor and Jake Tapper and Anderson Cooper and Rachel Maddow and Adam Schiff and Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and Barack Obama, they're all going to be screaming, fascism, and Pisco and this is fascism. The norms are being destroyed, when they cheered on this exactly happening in the opposite direction. And the only way that it stops is when there's a mutually assured destruction where people are like, holy shit, something needs to happen. That won't happen. We can see it won't happen because they went after Trump for 4 years when he was president. Then when he wasn't president, they went after him for 4 years again. And so now it's like, okay, fuck it. What's the lesson to Trump? If you don't go after them, they won't go after you. They just tried to throw his ass in prison for fucking life over bullshit in this Alvin Bragg case when he wasn't in office. So the idea that he should think, well, if you don't engage in a tit for tat, then the cooler heads will prevail. That game's gone. That's done. They broke the fucking ice on that. And so now the only chance of putting that genie back in the bottle is, it's like, okay, fuckhead, Schumer, Pelosi, now you got to be worried about it. Then maybe they'll come to the table and say, whoa, this is too much. I got to give some shout outs real quick, and then you could have the next word. John Ruck, thank you so much for 3 months, says already. Hit thumbs up, hit the like, y'all, share videos, thank you. Justin Henley for $2 says, thanks, Rob, anytime. Then Justin gifts 5 memberships. Thank you so much, Justin. John Beard becomes a member, says Jim Bob hates books. Maybe he likes a few. Potentially Criminal Sean, what's up? For $2 says we need a war on glowies. Couldn't agree more. Alter Void for $5 says just replace censorship with bullying. Sorry, but tons of us think if you stop bullying with fighting back. Old School becomes a member for 1 month, says I have problems with Trump, still voted for him. Agreed. Speaker of the Dead, member for 2 months, says selective prosecution is the future of justice in the country. Yeah, unfortunately. And then lastly, always incredibly generous, Jess Gerald donates 50 memberships. Thank you so much, Jess Gerald, as always. Incredibly generous as always. I really appreciate it. My guest that I'm talking to right now is Mr. Middleman, who I don't know if you have a channel or anything you want to shout out, but was just someone I was having a conversation with on X today about the idea of political lawfare and double standards and things of that nature. So that's where we're going. So sorry to interrupt you there. But
yeah. So I guess I think we've kind of gone over it a couple times now, and I think that our understandings or we're not too far off in how we are looking at the situation as far as what would appropriate responses
you know
be.
If I could say, you know what the irony is? I'm probably more upset by what Trump's going to do than what he should do than you, because it is what he should do, but I still don't like it. I wish that he didn't have to do it, right?
Yeah,
and I think you actually have less
effectiveness versus the.
Well, I think you actually have less of a problem with it. You're like, yeah, fuck it, investigate Nancy Pelosi.
Well, so
which is kind of
that
ironic.
part I think comes with I think you with a certain amount of it's kind of like the same thing. So with a certain amount of positioning and a certain amount of scrutiny comes with being a higher position and being a more. Like we see this with famous people, like, if you have a celebrity to a certain degree, like, yeah, you should be entitled to your right of privacy, but, paparazzi are going to follow you around. There's interest in having more eyes on you. So to a certain extent, Nancy Pelosi is a very prominent front row figure that there's going to be more scrutiny on her than there would be on some, forgettable no-name senator or someone, whatever, than someone like that. So I think that to a certain extent, that is kind of where I'm a little bit more okay with.
But if I could just for a second, right? But here's the problem I have. Like, there are certain crimes that, like, how do I put this? First off, I assume anyone at the national level in politics of that nature probably has committed crimes. There's probably a 90% chance of that. So then what we've effectively done is we've created, and then you can go beyond that. You might say, well, fuck them. But some of the crimes, like campaign finance crimes, what do you think the chances are that people violate campaign finance all the time and didn't know it? Now, that's not an excuse.
Probably, yeah.
But the way these laws are written, a good lawyer, a good prosecutor could make a claim, hey, right? So I'm worried about a system where we say, listen, if you rise to a certain level in your political party, guarantee criminal investigation coming. Guarantee it. Without a doubt, because you're in a position of prominence. That's it. I don't want that system. Because what that means is good people that maybe could do good things in those positions will say, for example, I don't know if I would be, I think I would have been a good congressman. I don't know that I would have been a good leader. I'm more of a wrecking ball. I don't know that I would be someone that would be a good leader. But let's say that you think I'm a good person. Do you think in that system that I would ever become Speaker of the House? Fuck no. I love my family. Fuck all that. I'm not going to tear my family apart. And it's similar to what we see with like Brett Kavanaugh. With who in their right mind as a man would want to take an appointment to the Supreme Court at this point by a Republican when you know you're going to get called a gang rapist? You absolutely know, almost 95% certainty that someone's going to come out and accuse you of sexually assaulting them. Who would do that? Like you look at Kavanaugh and you saw the left make fun of this man for crying. They were calling him a gang rapist in front of his children. They were saying he shouldn't be allowed to coach their basketball team. Who in their fucking right mind would put themselves through that? Maybe you'll find a special character that will, but most people would say, I'm going to pass. I'll pass on that. So then who are we left with? Well, people that are maybe so hungry for that sort of power that they're like, fuck it, I don't care. I put up with that. Maybe that's not the right person for the job. So I feel the same way about this. If we just accept, okay, well, at this point, now the rules are, once you're one of the leaders of your party, guess what? The investigations are coming. You know it. Like, is that really the system we want? Now, that's not to say if Nancy Pelosi murders someone, am I saying she shouldn't be investigated? No, I'm not saying that. But there needs to be a high threshold. And now that threshold has been lowered to almost nothing because Orange Man bad. And it is absurd to me to say, well, we just have to say that it's okay for Democrats to do that. No consequences for them. But the Republicans shouldn't fight back with that. They should raise that threshold again. And then when the Democrats get there, they'll lower that threshold again. Because the next guy, you already see it. Ron DeSantis is like an even scarier Trump. He has the same Hitler-like tendencies, but he's more well-polished. Same with J.D. Vance. That genie's not going back in the bottle until there are consequences. I hope that those consequences are, instead of targeting Nancy Pelosi or targeting Chuck Schumer or targeting Liz, I hope those consequences are targeting Chris Wray and targeting the former heads, John Brennan, the former head of the CIA. That's where the consequences should be. So that then, when politician stands up and says, I want Liz Cheney investigated, the FBI might say, well, we don't do that shit. Sorry. Instead, now the FBI says, oh boy, we hate Trump. We hate the people connected to him, just like Chuck Schumer said. So yes, we will go after them. That's the fucking problem. I have less of a problem with blustering politicians saying, I demand my opponent be looked into. I have more a problem with the institution themselves saying, abso-fucking-lutely, but only the ones we don't like. And the ones we do like the Bidens, like Hillary, will protect to the hilt. That's my problem. I'll give you the final word because I have one more caller and I have to be out by 9 o'clock, so...
Okay, yeah, sure. I guess the last thing I'm just kind of curious, I guess. How do you like? So I get what you're saying, and I don't have a brilliant solution to the problem other than kind of approaching it. I think similarly to what you're saying of sort of a proportional response, not to just ramp it up further, but how do you see this ending? How do you see this?
My side will lose
perpetually into
that. The way it'll end, I'm 90% certain that my side will lose. That inevitably they will be convinced, not by people like you, but people saying what you're saying. And it'll be people from the Republican Party. It'll be the Mitch McConnells and the Paul Ryans and the Johnson, Speaker Johnson, and they're going to get in Trump's ear and they're going to say, you got to go above the fray. And then eventually that's probably what will happen, and there won't be any significant prosecutions or accountability. And then people like Trump that are considered outsiders, most of them who won't be billionaires, will be buried perpetually in the future by investigations, leaks to the press, etc. And we'll go back to the days of having Romneys versus Clintons. And it'll be back to the good old uniparty without populism. That's how I see it ending.
Well, but how would you prefer, like, in your ideal world, in your ideal situation with this strategy, what's the way that it could end? Like, best case scenario?
The best case scenario would be that pressure is put on Democrats and people that have engaged in crimes or corruption, which will cause sort of a bipartisan group of people to come together and say, look, we need cooler heads to prevail, and we need an investigation into these investigated agencies to make sure that they're not engaging in political malfeasance. We need to tighten the standards on that, and we need to criminally investigate the people at these agencies that abuse their position. Just like the problem with corrupt sheriff's office in a town, the first step is dealing with that corruption before you could say, now where do we go from here? And I think the best tool we have from getting there is stopping establishment Republicans and almost all of the Democrats that are fighting tooth and nail for any reform to come to agencies like the CIA, the FBI. And the only way they'll stop fighting tooth and nail against that reform is if the same standards that they've wished on others is employed upon themselves. Then maybe they'll say, you know what, it's time for reform. That's the best chance it is to solve. But it won't happen. But that's it. So,
I broadly agree with that direction. I think that obviously disagree with the way to go about getting that result. But you know, I appreciate the conversation, and
yeah, it was fun.
You bring me on and went way longer than I expected. So,
and let me say this: I know I talk a lot. If you ever want to do a debate with a moderator where we each have equal time, that's perfectly reasonable. We could set that up if you'd want, or you could just call back in if you ever. I do call-in shows on Friday. You talk about whatever topic you want. It doesn't have to be this. So,
okay.
So,
all right, sounds good. I am a very new content creator. I have a YouTube channel, Mr. Middleman. If you feel like checking it out, you know, I I don't know. I'm just getting started, so no
Yeah.
big deal. Yeah,
All right, man.
bad at shout outs.
No, that's okay.
So,
I'll try to find your channel before I leave here and put a link in my chat.
okay, I've only got like 3 or 4 videos, so
That's all right.
it's not whatever. You don't care if I do you care if I repost our conversation?
No, not at all. You
Okay,
can repost
cool.
it. Oh, you like? Yep. All right, man. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Yep. Nice talking to you.
All right, bye bye.
You seem like a decent kid. I think misguided, but I do want to say before I bring Raiceland in, I do have to be done by 9, so we're only gonna have like 10 minutes. I gotta. Well, we'll bring him on. Thanks so much, Cody Folsom, for the $2 super chat. Says hope all is well. It is. It's very well. Let's bring Raiceland on real quick. Hello, Raiceland. I know you've been waiting patiently. What's happening? If you're even there.
Hey, how is my mic? I'm using a different headset.
Oh, your audio, it's terrible. Your mic's terrible.
Okay, can you give me like 5 seconds? I'm gonna get my other.
Yeah. While we're waiting, let me explain tomorrow's show for you. I have no idea what to expect. So I'm doing a debate interview tomorrow. Here's how this broke down. Tom Fullery messaged me, and he said, there's a guy named Alex from Playing with Fire who wants to do a debate on the election. He asked for a recommendation, so I said, can I connect you in a group chat? I said, sure, no problem. So this debate is set up for tomorrow, but it doesn't sound like we're going to be talking about the election or anything political whatsoever, because he started asking me a bunch of questions about what are my feelings on gay marriage? What are my feelings on no-fault divorce? What are my feelings on OnlyFans? Because apparently he has an OnlyFans creator who is also a lawyer or was a lawyer who wants to talk about no-fault divorce. So I said, whatever, I guess I'll talk about anything. So, I don't know how I purposely try to avoid this sort of OnlyFans type conversations. But here we are under the auspices of talking about the election. I'm now going to be talking about OnlyFans and no-fault divorce. So I'm not very excited. There's so much shit to talk about politically, but I mean, I agreed to do it. So, and I said whatever you want to talk about. So, the girl that apparently is joining us for the debate is Jasmine, Jazmen, or Jasmine's lawyer who became an OnlyFans star. He said you could check out if you want to see what she says. I don't really give a shit. But hey, Mr. Middleman, thanks for the $2. Appreciate the conversation. You too, man. The problem is I don't have any spicy takes on a lot of this shit, but I mean, whatever. So, hey, what's up, Raiceland?
Yeah, I was just
Hey,
listening. I want to say, like, I call in a lot and disagree, but like we agree on like 90% of things, and I think we even agree on this issue. But I think maybe I don't even know if we disagree with this, but I think the methods that are probably going to happen are just not the methods that I want to see happen.
Well, here's the problem, right? Trump's too ham-fisted. Like Trump's the type of dude that's like, he feels, this is just my gut feeling. Maybe you disagree with this. I feel like Trump's the kind of guy that could like be like, I'm going to war with you. I'm going to take down your financial empire. I'm going to take all of your properties, blah, blah, blah. And then fight like a drawn out year-long conflict to like bankrupt you. And then at the end of that lawsuit be like, let's go out for burgers. Like, he don't give a shit. To him, it's the game, right? It's like, it's fucking, that's it. It's business. It's the game. It's politics, whatever, you know? And so he looks at shit like, lock her up, blah, blah, blah. And then he gets there, he's like, I don't give a fuck about that. Right? And he looks at them trying to lock him up, and he's like, oh, let's try to win the election, you know? And then, And so he'll say shit, like he'll bluster, he'll pound his fist in ways I don't like. I don't particularly like him in the 2016 campaign screaming, lock her up all the time. I think that's kind of shit, to be honest, you know? And I understand why that would rankle people that are like, no, because the truth is he's less likely to do the more egregious shit, but he doesn't know how to talk in a sophisticated way. He's talking more like a normal person. Like a real smart criminal, they know how to rob you fucking blind and get away with it and never admit it and have an alibi. And that's basically what the corruption of places like the FBI, you're not going to find them like on public going, yeah, it's time to lock Trump up. We're going to do this, this, and that. They ain't going to do that. But Trump says that shit. Like he does. So I think that the way that it's most likely to play out is that you're going to see the same old bullshit. You're going to see Republican committees that are like, wow, what the January 6th committee did was shitty. And then nothing will come of it. Or maybe they get like a charge brought against someone like a Liz Cheney that's held in front of like a DC jury that acquits her. Like we saw with Durham. With the bullshit acquittals because we had deep blue cities that are like, fuck it. They don't care. They're going to say not guilty anytime if it means screwing over Trump. So I don't think anything with teeth's going to be done. The best chance is that it's legislatively or that, something like that. For me, what should happen would be Trump declassify as much stuff as possible. And show the American people just how corrupt it was. Maybe now with Elon owning X that the American people will have a chance to see that and believe it. And that they could then get some sort of accountability. But how do you see it playing out?
Well, I don't know. I haven't really thought about how I see it playing out because it's so hard to guess what Trump is going to do, honestly. Like, the platform he ran on in 2016, I never would have voted for him. And then I saw what he actually did between 2016 and 2020. And then now in 2020, I'm like, okay, well, this is actually the things that I want to happen. So I voted for him in 2020 and 2024. But how I want it to happen, like in my ideal world, is I actually want us to appoint special prosecutors and actually want us to go after these people. But I don't think that we should. I mean, even charges are okay, especially for egregious cases. But in general, I think most of it shouldn't be a punitive punishment, but we should make everything public. Sunlight is the best disinfectant, in my opinion.
I agree, but here's the problem. I would have said that same thing in 2016. I voted for Trump for two reasons in 2016. And I said this. One, because I felt that his election would expose to the average American how corrupt our system is. And I think he did that wonderfully. Not because he was playing 4D chess, but because the corrupt system couldn't help themselves. When you're a hammer, everything's a nail. And so they saw, here's this potential outsider, let's go after him. And so there was no longer anyone who's trying to be remotely objective could see just how corrupt the bulk of our mainstream media is, how corrupt our FBI was, all working in tandem to take down this one guy who was considered a potential outsider. But the other reason that I voted for him was to do something about it, which he did not. He did not drain the swamp. In fact, he appointed people directly from the swamp to prominent positions in his cabinet. Now, maybe he'll do better this time, but that's the truth of it. That was the criticism I had of Trump. But he showed the American people how corrupt it was, and nothing. Did anything substantially change? Nope. The corruption just became more blatant and more severe. It was like I do truly believe, in the words of Paul Gambetta, that the FBI, Comey and them, they probably had an oh shit moment. Oh shit! The American people are going to see how corrupt we are. And then something amazing happened. The American people saw how corrupt they were and said, And they were like, oh boy, great! We don't have to fucking pretend anymore. And that's what happened. And then where were we? So now I'm convinced that no, just outing the corruption of the American people, I'm sorry, there's so much propaganda that even if the corruption becomes blatant for everyone to see, that propaganda could convince the majority of Americans, so what? No big deal. It was necessary. And so now there need to be consequences. That's the only way I see going forward. Because it doesn't matter. Because it doesn't matter how corrupt things are, how blatant it is. The next time the FBI comes out, it'll probably happen in the next 2 years. We're going to hear that Donald Trump is a spy for China, Russia, North Korea, whatever. And so many of the people that are like, I'm fed up with this obvious corruption, they're going to say, oh boy, did you hear about that? And we'll be right back to square one. Same old shit. So no, I think that consequences need to happen, unfortunately. I'll give you the final word. I do have to be out by 9 o'clock, so I'll give you the final word on it. Did I lose you?
Yeah, I just,
Oh no,
I
no.
just,
Okay. Sorry.
yeah, I just think it's a bad precedent to set. Like I was talking with Tom about this last night, and like, there are plenty of presidents in our history, like Nixon and even before Nixon, that should have been charged with things but never were, until Trump came along. And I think we should try to return to that.
It's not possible.
Honestly, like,
It's not possible. It's not possible to return to that. How do you have one side say accept the unprecedented lawfare against you and don't retaliate? And trust us, it won't happen again. If you were Trump, would you take that deal?
Well, no, but the punitive punishment, if you release everything and investigate them, will come from the American people and
Will
not
it?
the
How?
DOJ.
How?
I mean,
Did
would
that-
you
did
vote
that-
for
did it-
somebody
did
if
it
you
come-
know that they were?
Did you know how corrupt they were with their investigation into Trump from 2016 to 2020?
Yeah.
How did that work in the 2020 election? Did the American people punish that corruption?
I think with the 2020 election, it was a unique thing because of COVID. I think COVID.
Oh, because of more lies told by our establishment. But they would never do that again. They'd never have. It wouldn't be like a war would spring up right around election time, or a scandal would spring up, or a disease would spring up, or a depression would. They would never do that, right?
Well, I mean, you're not wrong.
I predicted.
What
I
you're
didn't say it would be a pandemic. I'm not going to fucking. I'm no Alex Jones before 9/11 type shit. But I knew. I said they're going to crash the economy because they've successfully ruined Trump's name. A lot of people think he's a big asshole, and Trump certainly did a lot to help that impression. But the one thing people had was like going into 2020 is like, well, fuck it, my bank account's looking pretty good. So, and that's how most people are going to vote. So I said, they're going to do something to hurt the stability in the economy. And that's exactly what happened. Next thing you knew, we were locking down with no fucking scientific evidence that it was worthwhile doing. Meanwhile, at the same time they were telling us that we had to lock down, they themselves were going to the French Laundry and were going out on vacation and going to the hair salons. And they were allowing their Democrat shock troops to go out and riot across the country. And medical scientists were telling us the pandemic's really bad and you're non-essential. So you have to stay at home and not be able to afford to feed your family. And you can't visit your mom in the nursing home. And you can't have a wedding for your daughter. And your grandpa that died, you can't have a funeral for him. But you know what's more important than all that? Racism. So it's okay for Black Lives Matter to be out there. And it worked. It fucking worked. So I'm unpersuaded by the disinfectant will prove that the ultimate punishment will be that they'll lose at the ballot box. Right, in a world where they won't just engage in another act of corruption, which if there's no consequences, guess what they're going to do? Engage in another act of corruption. That's what'll happen. And so until there's consequences for that, they're just going to repeat that. And why wouldn't you? If you have impunity to do it, why wouldn't you? And this time, Trump got lucky through fortuitous events, and he happens to be a billionaire. What happens if you don't, and you get criminally charged, and they throw your ass in prison, and you were the front runner? Then what? The American people might say, oh, what are we going to do? Anyways, Super Bowl's on this weekend. New Call of Duty update comes out. That's how I feel. So, now, there have to be consequences. There just have to be. I would prefer, well, first off, the people at these intel agencies that engaged in political criminal corruption deserve to face criminal consequences because there will be no faith in those institutions until those consequences arise. Would you ever trust the FBI again if no one goes to jail for it? I won't.
Probably not.
Right?
Yeah.
So someone's got to go to jail. And I don't mean on bullshit charges. I mean legit. I mean, the American people, you're right. We need to see what happened, and then consequences need to happen. It's not enough to say, okay, here's what happened, but they all get off the hook and get their fat, juicy pensions and their cool jobs at CNN and MSNBC where they become millionaires. Fuck all that. Because then the next group that comes up, they're going to say, we're going to do the same shit. What's the consequences? No one's ever charged. We'll start spying on the next candidate we don't like. And, Raiceland's a cool guy. He'll say, oh, we don't like that you spied, but you shouldn't go to jail. There shouldn't be any consequences for you. It's just the American people will shake our fist at you and go, you dastardly jerk. Oh, boy, now we're upset. I hope you have fun at your vacation home because, we're so mad at you. Why would they ever change? What's What's their incentive to change in that world? If there's literally zero consequences other than the American people going, hey, we didn't like that.
Well, they're going to stop being elected. And also, I think there's...
James
other
Comey
issues.
wasn't elected. Chris Wray wasn't elected. John Brennan wasn't elected. What do they give a shit?
Yeah, I think.
Why would they
I'll
stop?
call in about this on
Yeah.
Friday as well. 'Cause
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
you
we're
could-
running out of time here.
Yeah, and now here's what's going on. I'll let you know. I hope my wife's not watching downstairs. My wife has some rapping she needs to take care of, and I don't mean like, Sugar Hill Gang. I mean like Christmas rapping. So she's like, if your ass isn't done by 9 or a little after, you're in deep shit. So I do have to get downstairs because it's now getting to that point in the holidays where we got events to go to tomorrow and Friday, so we got to get gifts wrapped up. So,
Yeah. All right. Well, you take care.
nice talking to you, Raiceland. Hopefully, we'll see you Friday. Dustin Buck, I see that you wanted to call in. Unfortunately, I do have to get going this evening. Enjoyed both my calls. Thank you so much to Raiceland. Thank you so much to Mr. Middleman. Thank you to everyone who donated. I really appreciate you all. We're still going to be putting that short content up on a daily basis. I screwed up and forgot to call my editor Black Elk today. I was supposed to call him today. I'll text him and tell him I'll call him tomorrow. So that's my bad. But we got some things coming down the pipe that hopefully you will enjoy. Excuse me. But yeah, I love these debates, particularly with talking about the topics that I like. Tune in tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern to listen to me argue with an OnlyFans lawyer. Sounds wonderful. Maybe I should just bring on Andrew. I'll just have Andrew do the voice, and I'll just... like it's me. He can just do the voice, and I'll lip sync it. I got shit to say. I guess the big thing they want to talk to me about is no fault divorce. I've literally thought about no fault divorce 2 minutes my entire life, and my gut feeling is, this is what I told them just on an initial reaction would be, I think that no fault divorce should be allowed, but if you get tax incentives to being married, I think that maybe you should forfeit those incentives that you've had while you were married if you get a no-fault divorce. So if my tax bill is 5% less because I'm married for 10 years and then I get a no-fault divorce, then I owe that money back. I haven't put much thought into it, but that was my initial thinking. I don't know. If they try to proxy attack Andrew, I'll fucking laugh at them. I don't much give a shit, but I don't really, I don't feel I have any hot takes on the OnlyFans type shit. Alex PWF is the person hosting the debate, and Jasmine is the OnlyFans performer that's going to be the person debating me. I don't know what to say. I think it sucks, but it should probably be legal. You should probably be allowed to film yourself having sex with people, I guess. But I think it's terrible. I don't know. That's it. I'm not going to sit here and say, you're a hoe. You're, blah, blah, blah. I don't really have that much in me. That's what other people do, which they're more than fine by me. But I don't know. It's not my forte. And I will tell you right now that had I known that that's what I was getting into, I'd have said, I'll probably pass on this. Thank you for the offer. But I thought I was debating about the election, and I did say whatever you want to talk about, so here we go. So, I don't know. Here we are. So, tune in tomorrow and watch me muddle through that. I don't want to do any debate prep. I don't give a shit. Tomorrow I'm doing fun stuff with my family. I'm not prepping for 1 fucking second for this ridiculous conversation. And I'm not saying that to shit on this Alex character or Jasmine. I'm not saying these aren't important topics. It's just... I don't care. Enough people talk about this shit. I don't care. That's basically it. Would I be down to have a 12-hour debate on vaccines? Sure. Well, people were telling me, am I not supposed to debate this person? Is something bad going to happen to me? I don't know. Anyways, I got to go. Thank you so much. We'll see you all tomorrow around 8 p.m. Check out my YouTube channel for shorts that are uploaded daily. Trying to upload them around 10 a.m., noon, 2 p.m., around those times. So thank you so much, everyone. We'll talk to you all soon. As always, have a good one.